available to you under the reference material. There's a lot of videos that I've went out and got concerning the TIA portal. Some of them we already looked at. Of course, some of the things we're not going to use. But remember, y'all have access to this stuff even after the class is over. So I don't know if your company, if you have to use the math operations and stuff like that, and PID control and stuff like that. But there's some neat videos on how to set that up. I'm pretty sure that Rosa, y'all have seen PLC? I'm pretty sure with all the motors and stuff y'all have out there and temperature control, y'all probably got a lot of that PID controlled stuff out there. So that's pretty interesting. So we know how to create a project. We know how to, let's look at that first. So let me bring up the portal, if I can remember where it's at. We know we can create tags on the fly, right? You understand that? But what we're going to do is we're going to actually so the best way is to figure out your tags. And what's nice about this class is all the tags have already been figured out for us. And then when I came up with your tag chart, I matched the addresses for the 1500. I matched that over to the actual ports that we have available to us on the 1200.
On the system side,
I'll show you how to do it. Nothing. No, there's no such thing on the Allen Bradley, and I'll show you. I don't have a. Do I have an Allen Bradley? I'll see if I can find it. The Allen Bradley PLC, or what they did on RS Logic 500, is they set up all the memory for the user. So these clock files and these first scan files bits, these are already built into the system. So if you go, and I'll show you how to access those through the status register. So that's that S2 file over on the left-hand side, where you can access the first scan and that kind of stuff. On newer PLCs, they basically don't assign the memory. So what that means, if you don't need that first scan, if you don't need those clocks, they require you to set them up. Does that make sense? So yeah. So I can bring up. I don't have a PLC hooked up that I'll actually see it run, but so this is the 500. And what we have over here is we have this status register right here. This is that clock that we can use. But over here we have to specify a bit. So if we had this thing running, you'll see this thing running like crazy. And then this is just a binary counter. So this guy's changing real fast, and this would be this speed divided by 2. That would be this speed divided by 4 divided by 8, 16, 32, like that. So the slower you want to access it, the bit higher the bit. Well, you'd use S4 14 4, and you would say bit. You'd say that bit, and you could put that into a program, and it would sit there and blink like that, right? You understand? If I wanted to look at the scan time, I come over here. It tells me the scan time. If I wanted to look at different things, all this is already set up. Let's see, where's first scan at? It's in here somewhere. That's math. Yeah, so there's the first, so S:1/15, that would be the first gambit. And this is built into the program. But what we've done, even with the Artist Logic 5000, is none of the memory is assigned, because if you don't need this bit, why assign it to, why waste your memory in it, right? So that's like having applications on your phone that you never, ever use. What are you doing? You're just eating memory, but you're eating memory up in your what? In your phone. You only got so much in there. So even to have the program installed, it takes a little more when you run it, but even to have the program installed. So usually when you buy a new phone, it'll have all them applications out there, and you're never going to use it. One of the first things you do is what? Just go out there and delete them. I couldn't tell you. But what we have to do on the Siemens PLCs, so let's pop up the S, and this is on the S7. Of course, we're using the TIA Portal S7, which basically makes it more user friendly. S7, once we got into the actual program for the S7 software, it is exactly the same as the 1200, the layout. It's just that you got to do more configuration, like setting up the IP addresses and stuff like that, which is a little more difficult on the original S7 software. But what we do on the and this is one of the things I should have thought about, is that the hardware configuration in the PLC when we first get it is basically very fundamental, and we can add to the hardware configuration as we go along. Oh, I already got it running. Good. So down here, I don't know if y'all noticed this at the bottom, but we have two ways we can go. This is what they call the portal view. This is where we can add new devices and stuff. Makes it more graphical. We can still, and this is what we call the project view. So the the portal view, this is where you actually, our programs are actually created. And of course, what we know, we come over here and we go to PLC, and then this shows us everything. And down here, we have our tag chart, right? And then show all tags. And this is where we can actually go and set up our tags. So we come up here, we type in a tag name, right? And then we come up here and we have to specify a type. Boolean means it's ones and zeros, right? Does that make sense? And then over here, this is where we could assign it to whatever IO port that we want to assign it. All it's showing us here is the last available. So we can come up here and click on it, and then we can just change the address over, right, to the byte number and the word number. And so this is the way we would come up here and just create all our tags. And it says add a new tag, add a new tag, add a new tag. And so what we can do here is we can actually create our tag table before we even start making our program. And what's nice about that is that now when you do a run, you're not worried about addresses anymore. You're just worried about tags, right? So you just start typing in the tag. And what's so neat is when you hit like T, all the tags with T pop up right below there. And if it's not, then you can keep typing, and you'll notice that the tags being displayed will reduce. And then you type in T. If it's there, you go down, click on it, and your tag's there. So a lot of times you don't even have to do what? Type in the whole tag name. You can just start the tag name, which is pretty neat. So where do we go? Yeah, we go down under our PLC. We go down to PLC tags and show all tags. And then there we can just do what? We can just start adding those tags in. Are we okay? Yeah, but that says, I think, Bernard and, with some reason was having problems on Bernard and Maurice's. And, this is the way they entered that. And after they started it, that's what they did. Now, over under PLC, of course, program blocks. We see right here we have a what? Add new block. First of all, let's bring up our main. So this is the main that I was just playing around with in the other class. Now on the Rockwell software, RS Logix, if we wanted to create a subroutine, we have a subroutine instruction. Okay. We create the subroutine and we have to assign it to a file number that they call a U. And it would be, so the first one would be 3 because 2 is already used by ladder 2, right? Understand? Then what we would do is that we would go over, I don't know if I can, see, I probably can do it. I should have left it running in the background. Oops. I'm going to add a new rung. Just add a switch or a push button, some type of push button. Down here on 500, when you enter, it pops up here and it defaults to your comments. And this is where they don't call them tags, they call them symbols. For 500, now on 5,000, it's tags. Okay. And what we would do to do a subroutine is we come over here and find this in our instruction set. Oops, something else. If I can remember where it's at. Program control. And then here's our JSR instruction. We insert it there. And then the first thing we have to do is assign it a file number. So we would use 3 here, right? Because we've already used in what? 2 has already been used. Okay, are we okay? Now another thing we have to do is we have to come up here and we'll right click on this and say a new. And then we, file number 3, we give it a name. And then we come up here and click OK. And notice another ladder popped up under ladder 2. Okay. And what we do now is we can double click on this and notice it added a what? It added another tab down here. So by default, by the way, when you exit out, what it'll do is it'll load the last tab you had selected. So even ladder 1 will be in 2. So you have to reopen ladder 2. And this is where we would create our subroutine. And this is where we create our subroutine. But what you have to do is the last instruction that you have to put inside this thing. Is this guy right here. Oops. Is a return from subroutine. And what was neat is that you could come up here and you could delete this and you could run this little program over and over and over again without it going back to the main. And that way you could verify that this section of the program was working. which is really cool. Or you can make it conditional. So a subroutine can either be what we call unconditional, or it can be conditional. So this right here would be considered a conditional subroutine. Why? Because this switch has to be closed. If I don't put that switch there, then it means it's what we call an unconditional subroutine, which every time it hits that rung, it jumps that subroutine. And then, of course, when it hits the return, it comes back, right? You understand? Does that make sense? What they've done with the newer versions is they just don't have the return anymore. So if you load in the subroutine by itself and then run it, it'll run itself. Only when it's called will it return. So it's pretty. Are we okay? Does this make sense? So when I jump the subroutine on this one, I have to know the file number of the subroutine. We're not jumping to a name, we're jumping to a file number. Does that make sense? There is a subroutine instruction you can put on top that they recommend that you put in the first rung, and you can actually give the subroutine a name with it, but it really is optional. Are we okay? This makes sense. So what we do over here on the Siemens PLC, and this is really cool, is I just come over here on programs and add a what? Add a new block. You got to double click on it, Rich. And this is the programming languages that this PLC supports. So it supports ladder, function block, and structured text. Of course, we're using what? Ladder. That would be a really good class where you take the ladder diagrams for the 1500s and then convert it over to another language besides ladder. Then we come up here. We give it a name. So what we'll do is we'll give the subroutines the same name as the subroutines. We'll say JSR and it says like auto. Well, we'll give that subroutine what? Name auto. And then we'll hit OK. And then notice it adds that auto over it. Now what's neat about the Siemens PLCs is we don't have a special instruction. If we want to jump to a subroutine, we just drag it. Everybody knows how to drag, right? You just pull it over to the block, and it inserts the instruction for us. Is that cool? So we can have it out there by itself, just like that. If it's an unconditional subroutine, it'll just be on the rung by itself. If it's a conditional subroutine, then we'll come up here and do what? Put some type of control element between the subroutine. So now it would be what we call a conditional subroutine. And then when I write it, I just double click. Huh? What's that? Well, we know for a fact that we want to divide our main program up into sections. So if I was going to just divide my main program up to sections or different fundamental subroutines, they would all be unconditional. But sometimes we only want that section of the program to run when a certain condition is. So when you go over there, we don't want it to run the e-stop program unless the what?
Is the conditional subroutine or the unconditional subroutine
just a conditional program and divide it into more manageable sections. The same thing's true with a conditional. It's just that subroutine, it's actually serving a specific purpose besides just breaking the main program up to more manageable sections. That makes sense. So like the e-stop, when do we want the e-stop subroutine to run? Only when the e-stop, right? You understand? And also when you press the stop button. We don't want it to run. We don't want it to constantly run the stop, right? You understand? Or the reset. We wouldn't want the reset routine to run unless what? We press the reset button. So we got several conditional ones in here that we'll look at. And then we've got several unconditional ones that we'll see. Are we okay? Does that make sense? Okay. Now, RS Logic 5000 will not let you enter an address without a tag. And in fact, the way we enter that, the way I need, mine's crashing right now. I need to figure out which one I got. And you have to almost, the way they enter addresses is really, really long. It's really weird. But what happens is when you start, it'll list the IOs that are available. You usually just click on them, and then it's going to require a tag. The Siemens PLCs, if you don't assign a tag, what will it do? Yeah, it gives it a fault tag number, which basically don't mean anything, right? I already assigned this tag. That's what I'm saying. Okay. Are we okay? Now, what we're going to do to set up the memory, this is what we had to do the other day. We had a couple of the, we had two of the groups, both of mine worked perfect, that didn't recognize the hardware configuration for the panel, even though we went through the detect and all that kind of stuff. So I don't know if y'all knew this, but by the way, we can name the PLC. So right now it's called PLC 1. We can right click on that, and then we can come up here and we can rename the PLC. So this is where you're going to name your PLC depending on which section of the line you're going to be running, right? So one of you is going to be running testing, and then the other one is going to be running process. So now our PLC has a name. Okay. Are we okay? Then what we have, we have to, I don't think this is the program I was using when the PLC I was using when I run this program. So let's reconnect it. So I don't know if y'all noticed right here it said what? Yeah, so what that meant is I'm not communicating with it. Huh? No, you don't. All you got to do is I just clicked on the download, and then it started saying I'm gonna, and so we started the search, right? And then we found it, so I'm gonna come up here and detect it, and it's gonna assign it the IP that I use the default IP on this one, and we should be okay. If there's a program, okay. This is one thing I like about the Siemens portal. It kind of takes care of you as you move along. So it looks like there might be a program in there. It didn't like something. Stop all. Is that all these guys right here don't really do anything for you? With errors, okay. Let's go back and look and see what our error. Oh. I won't have to help me, guys. I'm teaching two. So where's our check at? We don't want to download. We want to check, see if it's going to compile okay. I think I know what the problem is. But, I just want to see. Compiling, finish error. Network, the operand requires an input or an output is missing. No. There we go. I'm just gonna leave that tag. I think that was probably it. Let's see. No, it still says it's got a compiler. Network 1. The operand required at the input or output is missing or has an incorrect data type. If it was my tag when I set that up.